At the time of recording this, it is 7:04 a.m., actually just turned to 7:05 a.m., which means that we are officially less than 2 hours away from the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct. It's going to be about an hour long. It's going to include a look at the hardware, some of the games, launch titles and such, and to say that I'm excited would be quite the understatement. Now, I had quite a funny history or experience with the Nintendo Switch. I actually didn't have one for a very long time. In fact, I didn't get my own until 2023. However, I got to play on a lot of my friends' Nintendo Switches, on some of my family members' Nintendo Switches, so I had a lot of experience with the system. And in the last 2 years that I've owned one, I went through and I went on a massive Switch binge, getting all of the heavy hitters, grinding out a ton of the games that I missed, like, you know, Mario Odyssey, Splatoon, Xenoblade, etc. And now that we're here, and now that the Switch 2 is about to be fully unveiled, and we're gonna finally know when this system is releasing, because I feel like that's the biggest question, right? It's like, when is this thing gonna release? Because I feel like, okay, here's the thing. Obviously, the Switch 2 wouldn't necessarily draw in the same audience that would be playing something like, say, GTA 6. But at the same time, it kind of does, because kids play GTA as well, and obviously Nintendo tends to appeal more towards children, or likewise, how do I say this? Man-children like myself, or just people that are still children at heart, as we all should be. Not to get too philosophical here, but I don't really think there's such thing as a difference between a child spirit and an adult spirit. I think that when we are children, that is the most pure, raw, and truest forms of ourselves that we'll ever be, and growing up is just, you know, a manifestation of societal ideals and just what we should be once we grow up, right? Being more stern and emotionless. But honestly, I think when we're children, that is the rawest and truest forms of ourselves. And then when we grow up, we just kind of let society tell us how we should be, but I say, why do that? I say screw that, in fact. I embrace who I am. But anyway, it's kind of funny because even though I didn't have a Switch until just a few years ago, I still kept up with, like, basically everything going on with the Switch for, like anytime anything was happening when it came to new game releases, new editions of the Switch, I kept up with every bit of Switch news. I just didn't get to one because I was really poor at the time when it released and was really poor until a few years ago, and now I'm on the borderline, I get by. So what I wanted to do is just kind of go through and highlight some of the heavy hitters, or just some of the main first-party / third-party games that are released on the Switch each year, and just kind of talk about the Switch as a whole, and kind of do one last send-off, since we're on the horizon of a new era of Switch, even though the Switch 2 will be backwards compatible. So it's gonna be kind of a similar situation to the PS5 / Series X and the PS4 and Xbox One, where it'll be a new generation, and to an extent it might even feel like a new generation, but it's more or less just gonna be a more powerful continuation of what we already had, which, you know what? I'm cool with that. So obviously when talking about the Switch's launch lineup, we have to talk about Breath of the Wild and 1-2 Switch, which were basically like the only first-party offerings, and things were very dry for the Switch for the first couple months. I would say almost like kind of the first year of its release until they started really, you know, pumping things out, just because Nintendo didn't have a lot of third-party support after the Wii U, which I still, hold up, let's see if I can get it in the camera frame there, next to the PS5, because yeah, there's my Switch on the other side of the PS5, but then there's my Wii U right there. Always keep that thing plugged in. The Wii U is such an underrated system, and whether you want to blame it on marketing mishaps or one thing or another, unfortunately, the Wii U just didn't sell as well as Nintendo would have hoped and as much as it needed to be considered a success. I believe it only sold, correct me if I'm wrong, but during its life, somewhere in the ballpark of like 12 to 13 million units. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe it was more, maybe it was closer to 20, but it wasn't more than 20. So, you know, Nintendo was struggling to get third-party support when the system first released, because they had a lot of support with the, you know, going from the Wii to the Wii U because how big the Wii was, and then, you know, publishers dropped off, and that was that. But for the Nintendo Switch, again, Breath of the Wild and 1-2 Switch, an amazing launch lineup right there. And then you look through 2017, because obviously the Switch released at the beginning of 2017, you know, in March. We had Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Splatoon 2, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which, again, let me just say, it is insane that we went the entire Switch generation without a new Mario Kart. Obviously, it's already been revealed that we're getting a new Mario Kart with, you know, the Nintendo Switch 2, but it is still just insane that it's been over a decade since the last Mario Kart game. Now, granted, they did a lot of substantial things to add to Mario Kart 8 with the booster course passes, and I believe the amount of tracks that they ended up adding was more than the amount of tracks that was in the base game, or at least equal to that, which is a lot of tracks. And then you got other games like Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, which I've always sung that game's praises, saying that it's a very underrated game, as well as the sequel Sparks of Hope. I absolutely love the Mario and Rabbids games. It's really cool seeing Mario just in that strategy RPG format. Oh, and the DLC for Kingdom Battle, the Donkey Kong one, that one was a lot of fun as well. You had like different movesets and such that applied more to the Donkey Kong characters, which was really cool. ARMS, which was a really innovative title, which kind of harkened back to the Wii days where you kind of had to use the Switch Joy-Cons to kind of, you know, do the whole Wiimote thing, so I always thought that game was pretty cool. Pokken Tournament DX, this is the whole genre or category of Switch games where it's just Wii U game, but on Switch. And in this case, you know, Pokken Tournament DX, it has like all the DLC characters included, so usually when a game would come to Switch, it's just kind of, here it is. It either has all the DLC that it had on the Wii U packaged in, now it runs at maybe like 1080p, maybe a higher frame rate. I can think of maybe like 1 or 2 games that actually had an FPS boost. For the most part, the FPS was actually the same, but in terms of resolution, it usually got a boost there, and sometimes it would get new substantial content, or certain things would be tweaked in the game. Like, for example, I look at Super Mario 3D World. They boosted every character speed by about 25%, and then they obviously also included Bowser's Fury, which was basically like an entire mini game in itself. I'm not saying mini game like, you know, just like, oh, a little mini game in the game. No, I just mean like it's like a mini full-scale game. I mean, it does go for a while. I'd even consider it to be a full-scale game. Fire Emblem Warriors, which is the second time, I believe, unless there was another one that I somehow missed, that we saw a Nintendo IP get Warriors-ified, because obviously it happened with Hyrule Warriors, and then we had the sequel to that, which came out later, Age of Calamity, but then, you know, Fire Emblem Warriors, which was a really fun game. I honestly really like when different series get the Warriors treatment, right? Because we see things like Fire Emblem and Hyrule Warriors, and I really liked the One Piece Pirate Warriors games. And beyond all that, you definitely started to see the third-party support kick up a little bit later in the year, right? Like, you obviously have things like NBA 2K, and then you have some other games, like some amazing indie games on here, like SteamWorld Dig 2, and then you got, you know, some of the other games, like obviously the Lego games, right? The Lego Ninjago movie games, Sonic Forces, which is really, it's really underrated Sonic game. I really enjoyed that game. Little Nightmares was 2017. That's right, man. I can't believe that game has been out for that long, but moving on to 2018, oh man, I see Celeste right at the top. Such an amazing game, man. That game, it's funny because that game is so popular, and yet I feel like more people need to play it, you know what I mean? Moving on to 2018, we got Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, which is kind of funny because it's kind of just based on the bones of the Wii U / 3DS version, specifically the Wii U version. But I just feel like there's something that I gravitate towards the Wii U and 3DS version still, just because I love Smash Bros. Ultimate. It's a great rendition of the game. Obviously, it has a ton of characters in it. Like, when it says Smash Bros. Ultimate, that's the truth. It is the ultimate Smash Bros. Games in terms of, like, stages and overall characters and such. But there's something about the game where I love it, and I love the way it plays. I don't know if it's something with the color palette, but it's just something where when I play the Wii U or 3DS version of Smash Bros., I'm just like, there's just something about the vibe where I'm like, yes, it's like the same reason why I go back to play, like, you know, Smash Bros. On the N64, or Brawl, or Melee on the GameCube, right? Like, I love Smash Ultimate. Do not get me wrong. It is the ultimate Smash game, but it's just something about the colors and the vibes, and this wouldn't have been an issue if it was like its own standalone game, which, you know, it really is. But since it's kind of based on the bones of the Wii U version, I guess there's just like comparisons that are made in my mind, so maybe it's like a nostalgia bias type thing, right? It's kind of the same way that I go back and play the legacy versions of Minecraft, even though there's like updated Bedrock versions of modern consoles, right? So, you know, I'm the guy where everybody's all playing, oh, look at the new Minecraft update. You know, I have been dabbling with the new updates and such, but more times than not when I'm going back to revisit Minecraft, I'm playing it on my PS Vita, my Wii U, my Xbox 360, etc. And then here we see many of those quote-unquote definitive edition / Wii U to Switch conversions, with Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition, including all like the DLC and such. Got stuff like Dark Souls Remastered coming to the Switch, which was a huge deal, and honestly, the fact that Dark Souls runs in a portable form factor and ran as well as it did, I know it's an Xbox 360 / PS3 game, so you would expect it to, but still, the game ran really well, all things considered, and was just really cool being able to rage on the go. Beyond that, we also got some other cool things like the Xenoblade Chronicles 2 DLC, Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu, Just Dance 2019, definitely a highlight from that year, Super Mario Party, Mario Tennis Aces, Kirby Star Allies. So again, a really like a lot of good stuff coming out in 2018 when it comes to original releases. Katamari Damacy Reroll, that's a great game too. But yeah, we definitely saw a lot of those conversions. Like, remember, this was also the year when Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze was released on the Switch, and some of that definitely carried on into later years. So this will take us up to 2019, where we saw some bangers coming out this year, man. Okay, so Dragon Quest XI Echoes of an Elusive Age. Again, not necessarily like a first-party offering, but still just one I wanted to highlight because it's an awesome game. But then we saw the first official Pokemon game here on the Nintendo Switch with Pokemon Sword and Shield. When did Brilliant Diamond and all that? Because obviously this would have been like the first official one, but then there was like Brilliant Diamond. What year was that? Okay, that wasn't until 2021 anyway. So yeah, this would have been like the first official mainline Pokemon game. Because again, I know we just talked about like Pokken Tournament and Pokemon Let's Go and all that, but this is like the first official double release one. So we had Pokemon Sword and Shield, which were great games. Fire Emblem Three Houses, an amazing Fire Emblem game. Astral Chain, which was a super underrated game as well. If you haven't played Astral Chain before, I highly recommend that game. That game is insane. Luigi's Mansion 3, which is still one of the most stunning games to look at on the Nintendo Switch. I feel like Luigi's Mansion 3 and Metroid Prime Remastered kind of go head-to-head for the most impressive games, in my opinion, when it comes to just sheer like graphics, fidelity, and art style, and all that just kind of like intertwined on the Switch. Like that's one of those things, right, where people like to look at graphics and be like, oh man, look at how many pixels are in this character's face and the way that the hair flows and stuff. But graphics go beyond just sheer fidelity and quote-unquote realism. It's also all about the art style. So you look at something like Luigi's Mansion 3 and Metroid Prime Remastered, and even though they don't go for like a realistic style, they are genuinely just some of the most beautiful and graphically impressive games I've ever seen, just because of how good their art style was and how well they honed into it and intertwining sheer graphics and fidelity with that art style. But then we had some other games that year like Yoshi's Crafted World, Super Mario Maker 2, which was a fantastic game and is, I would say, objectively infinitely replayable just because you have all of that content constantly coming out, all these crazy new levels and such. I'm curious to see if we'll get a Mario Maker 3 on Switch 2, and it would be cool if maybe we could finally get a 3D Mario Maker. So we have, and that would kind of be perfect, right? Maybe instead of calling it Super Mario Maker 2, you could call it Super Mario Maker 3D. So then you have the 2D level creator, but then you could also have the 3D one. So you could kind of create levels similar to, say, Super Mario 3D World. Or maybe they can include templates, so you can include like planet-sized levels or play spaces like you would in Mario Galaxy, for example. I mean, the possibilities are literally limitless if they would open things up enough. Oh, look at that. We also got Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020. You'll love to see it. Cadence of Hyrule, which was really cool. Obviously, this plays on the Crypt of the NecroDancer games, and it's a game that really surprised me just because I wasn't expecting it to, like, ever exist. Like, it was just so out of left field, but I'm glad that it exists because it was a really fun game. This year, we also had some other third-party games coming out, such as Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled, an amazing remake right there. Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, which is surprisingly still exclusive to the Switch. Mario Combat, oh my gosh. Mortal Kombat 11. New Super Lucky's Tale. Dude, that game was awesome. If y'all haven't played New Super Lucky's Tale, y'all gotta play that one. Don't get confused though, because there's Super Lucky's Tale and then there's New Super Lucky's Tale. Play New Super Lucky's Tale because it's literally the same game, just with some quality of life changes. Highly recommend that game, it's great. Blasphemous came out that year, another great game. Untitled Goose Game. Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. Yeah, some of the original developers from like the Donkey Kong Country games actually worked on the Yooka-Laylee games, and it really shows in the Impossible Lair, for example. That game is so good, and it's always going on sale for like, what, like $2 or $3 on the eShop? Definitely pick it up if you get the chance. Oh wow, it seems like they didn't have that many first-party releases here in 2020, because obviously that's the year that the world ended. So just kind of looking through it, we had Animal Crossing New Horizons, which that was the game that carried a lot of people through the world ending. Unfortunately, I was not one of those folks, because again, I didn't have the Switch at the time, but I was very jealously watching my family members as well as just YouTubers play the game, because I really wanted to play. Instead, I still have my Animal Crossing fix, whether we're talking about like New Leaf on the 3DS or, the DS or the GameCube, because obviously Animal Crossing was on plenty of other platforms, so I did have other ways to get my Animal Crossing fix, but I was sad that I wasn't able to play the new Animal Crossing. Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, which is an amazing remake / remaster of the original Wii game. It still boggles my mind to this day that they made Xenoblade Chronicles run on a Wii. Like, y'all don't understand how impressive that is. And then when they made it run on the new 3DS, like, obviously it wasn't the base 3DS, it was the new 3DS, which is more powerful, but it's getting it on a 3DS nonetheless. That was crazy. Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, which is what I was talking about before, the sequel to the original Hyrule Warriors. And Age of Calamity wasn't just another Warriors game. Like, they did a lot to really switch things up and give it its own identity beyond just like the Warriors thing, and that game just genuinely a fantastic game. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX, that was another great game right there. Paper Mario the Origami King, and beyond all that, that seems to really be it in terms of like first party releases. Okay, I just found another list. There actually was some other games that came out that year. For example, we had Tokyo Mirage Sessions finally come to the Switch after it was exclusive to the Wii U for a while. And yeah, actually, no, nothing to look through it. Oh, wait, no, we had Super Mario 3D All-Stars, which was like a remake, Pikmin 3 Deluxe, which was like another Wii U port. And okay, yeah, now that seems to actually be it for the 2020 releases. So again, a little bit, not as many as some of the other years, but again, it makes sense considering everything that happened at the time. And then going into 2021, we saw a lot of really good stuff this year. Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, as I was talking about before. It's basically just 3D World with a mini game attached to it. Bravely Default 2, which was the sequel to an amazing 3DS RPG. Monster Hunter Rise, new Pokemon Snap, Famicom Detective Club remakes, Miitopia. Oh man, this one isn't first party, but the Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD Remaster. Hold on, let me try to actually say that in Japanese. Shin Megami Tensei, yeah, something like that. 3 Nocturne HD Remaster. So yeah, that was really cool to see. Mario Golf Super Rush, which, you know, they had some cool ideas in that game, right? Like you hit the ball and then you have to chase after it. Even though golf is usually more of like a zen sport where you kind of play it to relax, it was still kind of cool getting that adrenaline rush twist on the golf. The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD, that was a very good remaster or remake, whatever you want to call it. But it does kind of suck that some of the functionality was like locked behind Amiibo, but you know. Pokemon Unite, No More Heroes 3, WarioWare Get It Together, Metroid Dread. Oh man, Metroid Dread is such a good game, man. Mario Party Superstars, Shin Megami Tensei 5, November 12th, and then Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl coming out towards the end of the year, November 19th, which were definitely some controversial remakes, but you know, I enjoyed the games, even though yes, there was a few things, like, for example, now that we had full 360 degrees of movement, unlike we did on the DS, it did allow you to kind of break the game in some instances, where you could get into some spots that you weren't supposed to, but otherwise, I dug those games, right? I thought the chibi art style was cool. It was different, but I thought it was cool. Kind of looking up and down the timeline. February 17th, Nintendo broadcast the first Nintendo Direct in its original format since September 2019. Which is impressive that they still pulled that off considering everything that was going on in the world in 2021. The 3DS celebrating its 10th anniversary. The Legend of Zelda celebrating its 35th anniversary, which means that, man, it's going to be celebrating its 40th anniversary next year, man. That is insane. Moving up to 2022, Banjo-Kazooie is added to the N64 library on Nintendo Switch Online. You love to see that. Nintendo acquired SRD. Oh yeah, that's right. That's about the time that the whole acquisition thing started to go a little crazy. Obviously, Microsoft like started that a few years before that, when they started making some acquisitions here and there with like Minecraft and all that. But yeah, I remember like shortly after the 2020 started, that's when we just started hearing, oh, this company's acquiring this. Oh, this company's consolidating. Oh, this company's shutting down because this acquired this person and this person's going bankrupt. So $70 billion acquisition. The Wii U celebrating its 10th anniversary in 2022. That was an emotional day for me, man. I love the Wii U so much, and I have so many memories with that system. But now if we go ahead and look at some of the notable releases, let's see. Pokemon Legends Arceus. Oh gosh, man, I remember when that game released, I was so jealous because I didn't get to play it for a while. But that was an awesome game. That's when we finally saw, because we've always kind of had an open world format with Pokemon, like ever since the earliest days, but this was different, right? Like this was like open world Pokemon on a level that we haven't seen before, and it was seriously impressive not only to see it running on the Switch, but also just the way that they adapted the formula into that open world format. It was crazy, man. I remember watching a lot of streams on that game, and I remember I was so jealous, like, man, I want to play it so bad. But then finally, obviously, got my own Switch, and then I was able to go through and play all those games. Let's see, we also saw the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass. Got the first wave of that in March of that year. Kirby and the Forgotten Land, the first official 3D Kirby game. An absolutely fantastic game. I love Kirby so much. The vibes of Kirby, man. Every time I see that pink little goofball, I never knew if Kirby was a boy or a girl because it's pink, but you know, Kirby. Just refer to it as Kirby. It identifies as a Kirby. You know, anytime it starts doing his little dances and jumps and flips and stuff, man, I love Kirby so much. Such a joyful little character, man. Anytime that I'm feeling down, I just go play a Kirby Kirby game, even if it's some just like Kirby Dream Land on the Game Boy, you know what I mean? You can beat that game in like 30 minutes tops. It's always such a nice, revitalizing experience, you know what I mean? Just makes you feel real good. Let's see, Mario Strikers Battle League, Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes, Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, which was an expansion of that game, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 also came out this year, Kirby's Dream Buffet, Splatoon 3, which just had its final event happen a little while ago, and that was definitely an emotional experience to see. It's just kind of like a nice send-off to the Switch and Splatoon on the Switch in general. Mario & Rabbids Sparks of Hope, once again, as I said before towards the beginning of this video, super underrated games. I definitely recommend checking them out, as well as their DLCs. Bayonetta 3, which it's really... how do I put this? It's just kind of funny seeing such a mature game with a main character that has so much sex appeal being exclusive to a Nintendo console. Obviously, it also has to do with the fact that Nintendo put a lot of money into just making like Bayonetta 2 happen on the Wii U back in the day, and then from there on, it just kind of by proxy became sort of exclusive to the Switch and Nintendo consoles, but it's still just kind of funny to see. And it is cool that the franchise ended up getting spun off a little bit when we got, like, Bayonetta Origins, for example. That was super unexpected, but it was really cool to see, and especially considering how different that game was compared to the normal Bayonetta games. We also got Pokemon Scarlet and Violet that year. That's crazy, man. That was already, like, 3 years ago. Where has the time gone? And then we got our third wave of the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass happening in December, so, you know, things were just rolling along there pretty well for that, and, yeah, just looking up and down the cover arts of all the games that released that year, just... saw a lot of, man. And it's just crazy how well Nintendo kept up the momentum despite everything that was happening in the world. Because obviously there was a lot of people that either had to work from home, and even if they could go into the office, you had to stay like 6 feet apart, everybody was wearing masks. So it's seriously impressive that they made all this happen not only through the pandemic, but then afterwards, just keeping that momentum up, you know, even years after the Switch release. Like, it's 2025, and just in last week's Nintendo Direct, they already announced more games that are coming to the Switch upwards through, like, 2026. Like, it's absolutely insane. Kicking off 2023, we saw some things like GoldenEye 007 coming to the N64 library, Super Nintendo World opening, a ton of games being added to the Nintendo Switch Online service this year, and then, oh man, I'm looking at the summer releases, everybody 1-2 Switch! Okay, so we have Fire Emblem Engage, another great Fire Emblem game, Metroid Prime Remastered, as I mentioned before, one of the most graphically impressive games on the Switch, in my opinion. Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, which was an unexpected remake of the amazing Wii game, but it was one that was very appreciated, especially with that new, more like cel-shaded art style rather than the all 3D art style in the Wii. Honestly, I don't have a preference for either one. I feel like both work, right? There's not really a right or wrong answer to that, so, you know, I feel like both art styles look great, but that was a great remake of that game. We got more Booster Course Pass stuff, as I was mentioning before. We got Bayonetta Origins here in 2023. The Super Mario Bros. Movie launched that April. Man, I still can't believe it's been 2 years since that movie. It's just the passage of time, man. It's just really hitting me lately. Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp, it finally launched in April 21st. I remember that game got delayed for so long because of other things going on in the world, so Nintendo didn't want to release it and possibly be disrespectful or start any controversies there. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, one of the best Zelda games, and I would just say one of the best video games of all time. Tears of the Kingdom is an amazing game. Pikmin 1 and 2 got remasters/remakes here on the Switch. Everybody 1-2 Switch launched June 30th, which you can now find for about $5 to $10 in a bargain bin on eBay. Pikmin 4 launched July 21st, which was a very nice surprise. I wasn't sure after Pikmin 3 and Pikmin 3 Deluxe if we were going to be getting another Pikmin game, but I'm glad that we did, because Pikmin has always been, hold on, how do I say his name properly in Japanese? Shigeru Miyamoto. That game and that series has always kind of been like his baby. It's always been quite evident that he has quite a love and fondness for that series, as you would expect, you know, if you create a series. So I'm glad that we caught Pikmin 4, because I just love the Pikmin games in general anyway, you know, they're really fun games, they're really addicting, and I'm super excited to see if we ever get a Pikmin 5. We also had F-Zero 99 that year, which was a really cool game. Seeing a quote-unquote new F-Zero game with the SNES art style and Nintendo kind of keep up with it in sort of like a live service manner, I felt like that was, even if it wasn't the brand new F-Zero game that a lot of us F-Zero fans have been necessarily asking for, I feel like I speak for a lot of us when I say that the gesture was definitely appreciated, especially with the fact that they kept updating the game, and definitely gives us hope that Maybe since they gave it some love, that maybe we'll get a new F-Zero game with the Switch too. I feel like it'd be a great way to show off the graphics and potential just due to how fast F-Zero is. Maybe if you wanted to show off new loading, like, remember when we first saw trailers for Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart and it showed, you know, Ratchet and Clank going between the different dimensions and all that, which let me just say, that is still wildly impressive, even years on from the PS5 releasing, playing games like Ratchet and Clank or Spider-Man 2 that utilize the SSD technology so well. But with something like F-Zero, could you imagine if they had like a dimension-changing mechanic like that, where, you know, we've had gimmicks in some of Nintendo's racing games like Mario Kart 8 where you can go on the walls and go upside down or go underwater. They gave us gliders, but maybe this time we could go between dimensions or between worlds or just something to really show off the SSD capabilities, the graphical capabilities. I feel like there's a lot of potential there with F-Zero to really be a show-stopping game if they'd really go in on it. Detective Pikachu Returns, which is another game that was really unexpected, but I'm really glad that it exists. It's a sequel to a, once again, underrated 3DS game. Super Mario Bros. Wonder, which was the first brand new 2D Mario game barring Super Mario Maker 2 since New Super Mario Bros. U on the Wii U back in 2012. So I wasn't sure. I mean, I knew we were going to get another 2D Mario game at some point. Like, it was just obvious. I just wasn't sure when it was going to happen, and I'm glad that it finally happened with Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and I'm glad that it turned out to be just as innovative and mind-blowing as it was. Like, it would have been very easy to just make another 2D Super Mario Bros. Game, and I feel like everybody would have been happy, right? Just like another 2D Super Mario Bros. Romp, it would just be good to have one after all those years. But with Wonder, it really took things to the next level, man. And, you know, between the new art style and gameplay mechanics and some of the new drops, like Mario turning into an elephant, like, that was a whole meme when the game came out. And this obviously was the first time that we heard the new Mario voice actor since, unfortunately, the original actor retired. But nonetheless, Mario Bros. Wonder was obviously a fantastic game. We got WarioWare Move It. We also got the 6th wave of the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass. We got a port of Hogwarts Legacy, Super Mario RPG Remake, which was, once again, another fantastic remake. Nintendo just always knocks it out of the park when it comes to remasters, remakes, reimaginings, whatever you want to call them. Super Mario RPG, it definitely adopted a very different art style from the original game. I've said it before how the original Super Mario RPG art style with sort of that claymation look is one of my favorite art styles in all of gaming, you know, in the original Super Nintendo. But the way that they adapted it to, you know, modern graphics or whatever, I feel like they still could have pulled off that original claymation look and still had it look really good. But considering the modern landscape of Nintendo and the way they kind of like to have their games look and sort of the cutesy art style they went for while still kind of retaining some of the, it wasn't a chibi art style, but sort of like chibi bobblehead looking characteristics for some of the characters, I feel like it still worked flawlessly. The game is absolutely gorgeous, and yeah, it just looks great. Moving on to 2024, this was definitely when things started to quote-unquote slow down a little bit, but we still had some pretty big releases here, right? We got like the Mario vs. Donkey Kong remaster, which was another one that was very unexpected but cool to see. Princess Peach Showtime, which was the first Princess Peach game since back on the DS. Endless Ocean Luminous, which was a sequel to a game that I don't think any of us thought was going to get a sequel from like the Wii, but you know, it was once again just very surprising to see. Nintendo is very good at that. Taking an IP that nobody was really expecting a sequel to or expecting remakes for or just expecting to see again, then they're like, hey, why don't we just bring it back and do that? You know, why not? Why not? We're Nintendo. We can do whatever we want. Kind of makes me wish they do that for some of their other IPs like, you know, F-Zero or Kid Icarus or Donkey Kong, but nonetheless. Which then leads us on to Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door Remaster, which, man, oh man. I remember watching that direct and I was so just shocked when I saw it pop up on screen. I was like, that's Thousand Year Door. And as the trailer kept going, I was like, that's Thousand Year Door. That's Thousand Year Door. Just over and over. And like, I wasn't even recording anything, so it wasn't even me like being dramatic. I was literally just sitting here by myself in my room watching it like, that's Thousand Year Door, just absolutely losing my mind. And that remake was just, oh, what a nostalgic trip down memory lane. Such a fantastic remake, man. Speaking of remakes, we also got Luigi's Mansion 2 HD. We also got Nintendo World Championships NES Edition, Emio the Smiling Man, Famicom Detective Club, which I remember had like its whole marketing stunt leading up to it where it was like, oh man, a mature rated Nintendo game, what's this? Looks all spooky and stuff. And then it turned out to be like a Famicom Detective Club sequel. It's definitely not what I was expecting it to be. Like, I wasn't sure what I was expecting. I was like, okay, is Nintendo gonna make like some survival horror game or something? But I feel like it was still cool nonetheless. Like, you know, it had been years since we got a Famicom Detective Club game, like literal decades at that point. And the closest thing we got to it was the remakes on the Nintendo Switch. So it was really cool to see that. Just another example of Nintendo going back to an IP from the past and be like, hey, we got that, why don't we just do it? The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, which is when Zelda got her first official game. It's funny because everybody thinks Legend of Zelda and they think that Link is Zelda just because he's sort of like the main character. But yeah, Zelda finally got her own first game. Super Mario Party Jamboree. Nintendo Music also released, which I actually have that app downloaded on my phone. It's really cool having an official place to just go through and listen to all those Nintendo things. Obviously, you could just do something like that on YouTube, but I feel like when you have it in that app format, you can just kind of see it all at once. You know what I mean? Just have all the Nintendo stuff in one place. It's really appreciated. I've really been appreciating and liking the different apps and things that Nintendo has been doing lately when it comes to branching out and just making their content and their ecosystem available to people in different ways, whether that be through alarm clocks or cool little like music applications or other things similar to that, or like theme parks, amusement parks, etc. I just really like this new era of Nintendo where they're going even beyond video games and just trying to, I don't know, get their characters out there in different ways. It's really cool to see and really appreciate it. Mario and Luigi Brothership, which was really surprising. I was not expecting us to get another Mario and Luigi game at that point, at least like maybe at some point in the future, but it just another thing where Nintendo was like, hey, let's just do this because we can, and then Fitness Boxing 3, your personal trainer. Love to see it. After that, we can go ahead and, yeah, that was basically it for 2024 when it comes to some of the main releases. Again, things were kind of slowing down at that point. Obviously, there's always a bunch of third-party games coming out on the Switch, but when it comes to first-party releases, which is what we're mainly focusing on here. Yeah, things started to slow down in 2024, and here in 2025, we're definitely starting to see that again, since obviously it's only April right now. We will go over some of the games that have already released, and obviously we already know that Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be coming out this year, so this is kind of like 2024 was the last full year of Nintendo Switch, and then 2025 is just sort of bridging the gap. Like, okay, we still have some games coming out for Switch because obviously they need to fill out their portfolio somehow, but this is definitely this is kind of it. Even though they did already announce that we are getting some new Switch games as late as 2026, so it is kind of interesting because things are still slowing down, but they still have stuff coming out for original Switch owners, which is pretty cool. So we have things here like Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, which was a game where I guess it was like less surprising in my mind when they announced it. This is one where it wasn't as surprising as it was to say like the Thousand Year Door remake, because I really wasn't expecting that, but Donkey Kong Country Returns HD is one that I felt like just made sense. You know, you already have Tropical Freeze on the system. You've already done all these remakes and remasters from the Wii U generation, the Wii generation, to the point of where I would say the Switch is the ultimate Nintendo console. If you want anything from like the Wii U generation, there's a high probability likelihood that it's on the Switch in some capacity. Even if it was only available through a limited release like Mario Galaxy, which is really stupid, they should really bring back that 3D All-Stars thing. Even if it's digitally only, or if they do more prints of it, like, they should really bring that back so people can experience those games. Because, you know, obviously Super Mario 64 was on that cartridge, so, or included in that package, whatever, so there is a way to already play that game through the Nintendo Switch Online app, obviously, but when it comes to Sunshine and Galaxy, there's no other way to play it on Switch, so I don't understand, again, why they handled that release the way that they did. But in terms of everything else, going back to retro systems, obviously they're all available through the Nintendo Switch Online apps. I feel like the only console that has a lack of representation here on the Nintendo Switch would be the GameCube, so I really hope that's something that they can iron out with the Switch 2, which I can only theorize that maybe they plan to add the GameCube as part of the Nintendo Switch Online app offerings with the Switch 2, which might be why they've been a bit hesitant when it comes to remakes and remasters for that system, but that's just speculation on my end. But if they do that, I can only assume that there's going to be a price hike in the expansion pack price. Right now it's $50 per year, so I would expect that to go up to maybe $60, $70, $80 per year if they'd add the GameCube to that. It really wouldn't surprise me, especially when you look at the price hikes for other similar subscription services. Like, you look at PlayStation Plus Premium, that went up to $160 from $120 just a little while ago, so anything's possible. Looking at some of the other games, Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, another release where I was like, okay, that just makes sense. We also got Nintendo Today releasing March 27th, which was another application similar to Nintendo Music, where you can just see everything going on in Nintendo, just really anything when it comes to news, releases, anything like that, just there in the app, so that's really cool. And then they've also announced some other things like Pokemon Legends Z to A, which is going to be coming out late 2025, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond coming out in some point in 2025, we assume, and beyond all that, that's basically all we have for this year. Again, I'm recording this now at 7:45 a.m., so the Direct hasn't happened just yet, not for another hour and 15 minutes or so, so at that point we'll hear about some of the games coming out you know, around launch for the Nintendo Switch or shortly after that. And this is obviously also just for 2025. Obviously, there was some games released or announced for 2026, like I mentioned with Tomodachi Life. It's also worth noting that this year, Splatoon will be celebrating its 10th anniversary, and the Super Mario series will celebrate its 40th anniversary, and the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, aka the SNES, will celebrate its 35th anniversary. So a lot of really cool stuff happening this year, but yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys back here in another, I'm gonna say if the Switch 1 lasted for like 8 years, I'm gonna say that the Switch 2, I'm gonna assume that the world ending might have had an effect on the Switch, but maybe not because the world ending kind of ended like a while ago. I'm going to say 7 years maybe until we see another Switch. I'm gonna say maybe 7 to 9, somewhere in that ballpark. I know that's kind of a safe guess, but I'm gonna say 7 to 9 years. I don't think we're gonna see a new Switch before then. 7 years is probably being generous too. I would say it's probably gonna be more like 8 to 9. Don't think it's gonna be 10. I don't think we're looking at a full 10, but 7 to 9, maybe somewhere in that range. But anyways, yeah, this time I'll be picking up the Nintendo Switch 2 on day 1. So I'll see you guys back here in 2032 or 2034 to do a brief recap / retrospective on the Nintendo Switch 2 like we just did here today for the Nintendo Switch 1. But anyways, until next time, Nintendo Switch, it's been an honor, and thank you for all the memories. And now, we look on to the Nintendo Switch 2, where it's basically going to be the same thing because it's literally just a more powerful Switch. It can run all the same games, our saves are going to transfer, so it's not really going to be like going to a new generation. It's not like we're kissing the Switch goodbye by any means, but at the same time, we kind of are, right? It's a new generation of Switch. It's still kind of a fresh start, even if it is just kind of going to be more of the Switch. You know what I mean? Just like a more powerful Switch, like I said before, but at the same time, we are still kind of kissing a generation goodbye in a way, so thank you, Nintendo Switch. But anyways, always smash shout out to all the patrons, and to remember, taking only the low ball tier, and be shout out to the ball tier, the last king, and we dad many, and be shout out to all the G tier, one of them, so much scroll. Thank you guys so much, guys, to Literal Legends. I love you. Good on you, Dodoki, arigatou gozaimasu. Have an amazing day, stay beautiful. I love you all. Peace.